We begin with the situation in Mali. We've reported for the course of the last 24 hours fresh coordinated attacks by the jihadist group JNIM and their Tuareg allies, FLA. The country's junta appears more threatened, more isolated than before in the capital Bamako, where there's been a blockade of the city for several months, and a nearby garrison stronghold of Kati, where the defence minister was killed back in April too. We reported what's been going on with these fresh assaults, but let's try and get some clarity on what's going on. So what we're hearing is this is in the north of the country. This is about 2 months after the capture of Kidal, and these are areas around a city and a town called Gao. Remember, this group, JNIM, has talked about wanting to carry on, to take over the government, including taking control of Timbuktu. Let's try and get a sense of what's going on in the wider country and how this is playing out and what role the Russian mercenaries are doing. Beverley Ochieng is a senior risk analysis consultant with Control Risk. Great to have you back on the programme with us, Beverley. Welcome back to France 24. First, let me get your understanding of this latest assault. Where should we be focusing on? How much pressure is the regime, the junta, under? And give us some context with the Russian mercenaries there too.
Well, yes. I mean, northern Mali will probably be the epicenter of any resurgent violence, as well as continued fighting between JNIM and FLA on one side and the Russian paramilitaries and the Malian army on the other side. Since 25th of April, when we had that wave of incidents across the country, there's been a bit of a lull, and both sides have really been building up. The Russian paramilitaries, Africa Corps, have been playing up a lot of demonstrating that they're giving ammunition to the Malian government and the military in the north. The Malian army has been carrying out parallel operations in other parts of the country, but JNIM and FLA have been including recruiting people to be able to reinforce their positions, building up towards a renewed offensive, which is what has happened this weekend. It's likely that they do want to entrench their positions in these regions. The Malian military junta's quest has been consolidating national territory, and that's been prioritizing the northern region in a counteroffensive to be able to reclaim areas like Kidal, Gao, and Nefis. These are areas where fighting will continue, but alongside that, there is still a blockade on the capital district, Bamako, as well as the garrison area of Kati. JNIM has maintained its position since late April when that offensive had begun, and it's a concern that these vantage points will still allow it to be able to carry out symbolic incidents in the capital and other areas. But for the most part, the north remains the area that is very hotly contested.
We'll show through the programme as we're talking to you just how things look on the map, because it's kind of key to see some of these cities as well. But let's go back to the beginning of May. You and I were talking. This is when the JNIM, this jihadist group that's joined forces with the Azawad Liberation Front, FLA, as you talked about. These are Tuareg separatists. They want independent. They want to create an independent homeland in northern Mali. So by the beginning of May, they had control of Tessalit. Am I right to say Telit, Kidal? Do we know what's going on inside those cities now? The kind of the life for those inside?
I mean, for the most part, they've continued to have a free reign, moving around quite freely in those areas and just trying to build a sense of political support. It has meant that the Malian army and the Russian paramilitaries remain on the outskirts and building their defenses in these regions to possibly lead another counter-offensive. In Gao, which is where now most of the fighting is taking place, even though the Malian army does maintain some positions in some areas and they still remain contested, if they do continue to lose ground in the northern regions, then it does undermine the military government's greater quest of having a sense of national solidarity or consolidation. And so JNIM and FLA coming together is one way of opportunistically challenging that sense of control that the military government initially had reasserted in November 2023. And this is a long insurgency. It's not something that is going to be resolved in a year or two. There's probably going to be quite a bit of sustained, erratic, unpredictable waves of violence taking place in the north, as well as the military trying to hold on to a sense of power and legitimacy in the southern regions.
Now, there's as you say, this is a years in kind of a progression, or years as this has started to flow. And we go back to 2023. We saw the French, last of the French troops leaving. We saw what's now the Africa Corps, the Russian mercenaries starting to come in. But this goes even before that. I know you've said before, go back to 2012 and onwards, where we started to see, the fall of the democratic governments, the regime starting to take over in the past decade or so. And the question, therefore, is, you've got this group now. You've talked about what's going on in Gao. There's been talk of a prison, trying to get jihadist fighters out of a prison. They're talking about a push towards Manaka and the historic city, as I mentioned, of Timbuktu. Given this has been going on, and given that the government are constantly on the defence, the junta, is there a credible chance that this group could take Timbuktu?
I mean, they do want to push for it. And the reason for this renewed offensive is to be able to push the army out of its current positions and then to continue moving this towards other newer areas. Of course, they still remain contested, not just JNIM, FLA, or the army and the Russian paramilitaries. There's also Islamic State, which adds another layer and complication to contested territories in the north. And then you're looking beyond the border of Mali, whereby these groups do maintain a sense of activity, in particular the Al-Qaeda group. So it's a fight for survival for many groups that want to have a sense of political presence, legitimacy, contesting the governments that are in place. And for the Malian government in particular, if they do lose more control in the northern regions, then that is a test of their legitimacy. It does bring about a crisis. The other issue is whether these groups are able to actually either present a sense of governance or representation. What resources do they have? What administration could they put in place? So beyond the fighting, there has to be the issue around state building and nation building. JNIM
Yes.
has only demonstrated a very limited capacity of this, while FLA, it has played around with democracy and governance over the years.
A brief thought, because we'll continue with the story. I know that we'll talk to you again soon, Beverley. But right now, is part of this the fact that they are able to recruit JNIM, and the regime has an issue with its legitimacy, its heavy-handedness that's forcing people or making people choose against them, and it's favouring the rebels?
It's a lot more nuanced. In the central region, there's a lot of coercion taking place. JNIM does carry out reprisal for people who do not sign non-aggression pacts. In the north, there has been a sense of marginalization over the years, so it's easy for them to join a group that they feel is not just a military alliance, but also a sense of political representation. And in Bamako itself, it's about being able to build a governance system that can include the whole country. But that's been extremely difficult since the peace deal was essentially abrogated in 2023, and because the government itself has had difficulty maintaining a sense of authority and legitimacy on a national level because of the armed threats by these groups.
Beverley, you distilled a very complex picture across the country in a very good amount of time there, in 30 seconds. Great to talk to you as always. Thank you. Beverley Ochieng, Senior Fellow and Analyst at Control Risks.